the first time I've ever read here that I didn't have a podium.
You want one?
No. But I'm just commenting. Anyway, here's this book that I co-wrote about 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember. It was either 1980 or 1981. The last time I was in New York, Nick Tosches and I started on this book. And the way it happened was New York is slowly but surely becoming Newark or LA or something. It's not New York anymore. It's like the rich got richer, the poor got poorer. It's just a repulsive place. And there was this bar called the Bells of Hell on 12th Street or 13th Street or something, University Place, that like I lived in this, when I turned 30, I moved to this town because I'd used up New York. And I had only 2 towns. When I was a rock writer, I used to get to travel, go to Indianapolis and Cleveland and wonderful places. And in my travels, I actually got to develop so-called friendships in LA and Montreal. Those are the 2 towns where I knew a lot of people. So I could have moved to Montreal, but it's like 100 degrees below zero every day of the week there. And all I really had there was hockey. And though I like hockey, that's not a year. And so I moved here. And the first few years I lived here, I would go back to New York when possible, especially if it was free. But I have not been back there in 5 years. And last time I was there, I hung out in the Bells of Hell with Nick Tosches and John Morthland and Billy Altman and all these people. And I hear that within a year of that bar closed. And I felt it was very warm to me, the fact that there was such thing as community, that you could find a bar where any hour of the day, at least one person you knew would be there. And never in LA since I've been here, has there been a bar where I felt that was even possible, that you could find 3 people that you knew who would be attracted to that same place. So anyway, in this bar, Nick Tosches is somebody once wrote that the only 3 jazz piano players worth considering as jazz piano players are Thelonious Monk, Bud Powell, and Cecil Taylor, because the 3 of them lived the fucking piano. They just, their life was a keyboard, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I've always felt that the only three rock writers worth considering were myself, Lester Bangs, who was dead, and Nick Tosches, because we were the only ones that took any risks at all, because rock writers were just a sorry bunch who wanted to get tickets to once upon a time the Sly Stone show, today the Bruce Springsteen show, whatever, or lots of records, and you can sell them, you can live off your records. But anyway, Lester, Nick, and I have always been, we've always written kind of offensive stuff that record companies have kicked us off lists for writing, And Nick once took refuge in, he moved to Nashville and wrote about country music as his oasis for a couple of years once, and wrote a book called Country. Stein and Day put that out. It's this book where he basically gets very scholastic about country music in a way that not one person who lives in Nashville could care about. And it came out while he was living in Nashville, and his marriage broke up about the time it came out, whatever. Anyway, so me and him were hanging out in the Bells of Hell, and he mentioned a Bukowski story in which it was supposed to be in the book South of No North, in which a guy's looking in an antique store or a junk store window where there's a mannequin, and he wants the mannequin real bad, but he's too shy to go in and buy it. So he looks at it for a week, and in the course of the week he's trying to come up with a line that will enable him to go in there and buy it without compromising who he is or whatever. This is real shy. So finally he just goes in the store and he says, how much is that antique cash register? How much is the propeller? How much is the mannequin? Oh, I'll take it. And he goes and buys the mannequin and he goes home and he puts a dress on it and he puts it in like his little separate room there. He's got a two-room apartment or something. And he puts the dress on it and he punches it and says, you fucked Frankie. And apparently, I found out a lot later, there's no such Bukowski story. That's a combination of two stories. But anyway, we're drinking in this bar, and we're talking about, what a great story. So we decided to write a novel about Frankie, about this guy who will fuck your gal. Okay? So I'll read it now. We didn't finish it. This is part one. There's 3 parts. Totaling maybe 50, 60 manuscript pages. We could finish it, and we know exactly, I mean, I could tell you the ending. Maybe if I'm drunk enough at the end, I'll tell you who Frankie is. But anyway, this is part one. It's ostensibly a detective story. These 2 guys are hired to find Frankie, who is fucking your gal. And this is way before, he went to Hollywood, But this is the intro. This is written by Bud and Roscoe Holliday. These are the 2 dicks. This is one of the few novels written in the first person, it's like first person plural, I guess. This is we. But what you are about to read is 98% fact. Because of and there's a lot of commas in this. It's like, there are more commas in this book than most, Tolstoy didn't use this many commas. What you're about to read is 98% fact. Because of the errant 2%, our editors tell us we must call it fiction, even though non-fiction outsells the fake stuff 25 to 1. But sales mean nothing to us compared to the semi-accurate reporting of a sordid tale that has lived in infamy for these almost many years. If at times our storytelling seems distorted or even fantastic, don't assume automatically that you're in the no man's land of the 2%. Consider instead how easy it is for the subconscious mind to erase certain unpleasant memories, to repress unwanted relics of paranoia past, to make a fairy tale out of history that will not make the dreamer wake screaming from a hard-earned sleep of peace. That few people care to recall the bizarre events of 1975-76, we decided to base the story the summer of 1975, like very interesting summer. What happened that summer? Nothing. We have it in New York, summer of 75. And in the course of this volume, we don't get to 76. So it was wishful thinking to think that we'd ever get to 76. That few people care to recall the bizarre events of 1975-76 does not mean these events never happened. Face it, you were there. Frankie fucked your gal. He'd have fucked ours too if we'd had one. It is time, we most firmly believe, to replay the saga of the Frankie years in their entirety, to tell it all if possible, without rekindling alarm, in any case, to tell it. If the writing is not always of the superbest qual you have encountered in your months or years before the printed page, remember that only one of us, parentheses, Roscoe, ever got his HS diploma and did a semester, well, almost at LIU. Like if you live in New York, LIU is, it's like Cal State Dominguez Hills. But expensive, but you pay for it. But hiring a ghostwriter was not for us, and we quickly discovered that poetic license offers the working stiff a lot more leeway than a PI license any day. Hell, this literary game ain't half bad at all. The Synonym Finder by J.I. Rodale and staff. He's this guy he's the guy who died on the Dick Cavett show. He wrote all this health crap. He said, I'm going to live. He was 75 years old. He said, I'm going to live to be 100. And he died. He had a heart attack, and it was never aired on the Dick Cavett show. But he actually did a great thesaurus. It's not bad. It's very bulky. It's like this fat. Okay. The Synonym Finder by J.I. Rodale and staff has been a great help throughout. If the dialogue ever seems too verbatim for your sophisticated bloodshot taste, let's just say we as Seamuses used any means necessary to get the parties to put their memory caps on straight. Bud and Roscoe Holiday. Okay, then we go to chapter 1, which is called Summer of, and you have like all this kind of like smut indication. You have like a parentheses sign, asterisk, all this junk. Summer of. Okay, and we begin by listing 3 Frankie tunes, because it was a big fad of that summer. And we have the lyrics, and at the bottom we have the publishing credentials of each. Something was suspicious. This first one, let's just say, is from You Fucked Frankie by Tony Orlando and Dawn. Copyright 1975 by Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips Music. Like in New York City, they actually, like the equivalent of age-sold fish and chips, they have Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips. Okay? I mean, he might have been dead already, but they had a company there. Okay, used by permission, it says. Okay, something was suspicious. Her pudding was amiss. The rumors, they were vicious. The taste of Frankie in her kiss. You fucked Frankie, your yellow ribbons turned to gray. You fucked Frankie, and now you're gonna pay. Okay, then we have Frankie Fucked Your Gal by Arlo Guthrie. Copyright 1975, Bound for Glory Music. If your gal fucks you, she'll fuck Frankie too. She fucked Frankie, and now you are blue. Then we have Frankie Fucked My Wife by Peter Frampton. Copyright 1975 by Benjamin Disraeli Tunes. Limited. Admit it, gal, you spread your knees. Admit it, bitch, you put your mouth where he pees. There's nothing you can say, you dirty, rotten slut. I've smelled your dirty laundry, and I know Frankie's had your butt. Okay, now get some basic text. They call it the Summer of Love. I mean, this is one of these, like, bogus histories, right? The Summer of Love, 1975. Summer of Smut was a lot more like it. Within a week of the monumental FCC decision to allow shit, piss, fuck, cunt, damn, ass, and weenie over the airwaves of America, the way out world of pop music was deluged with songs about Frankie. Frankie fucking your gal, Frankie fucking your mom, Frankie fucking your sis, Frankie fucking your wife, Frankie fucking your... You get the picture. These songs were, by and large, noisy and clangy as heck. Mantovani would surely have rolled over in his crypt. But beneath the savage lashings of the electric guitars, beneath the growling adenoidal vocals, beneath the frenzied, hopped-up bunga bunga of the hard rock drums, there was a cablegram from Filthsville that even non-fans of these hits could not help but catch the fucking tasteless drift of. The first of the lot was You Fucked Frankie by those popular TV entertainers Tony Orlando and Dawn. Entering the charts on July, I have quotes around charts, hipster term. Entering the charts on July 1st in the number 9 position. On July 8th, it made number 1 and was joined in the top 10 by Frankie Fucked Your Gal, as recorded by oft-controversial folk rock artist Arlo Guthrie, who took time off from his anti-Vietnam activities. I mean, in this book, Vietnam is still happening in 1975. Because we figured in a later chapter, Frankie would go to Vietnam or something. He took time off from his anti-Vietnam activities to join the Frankie bandwagon. His dad, hard-rambling lefty Woody Guthrie, a man of the old school just like Mantovani, would surely have rolled over in his worm pen too, had he not fortunately been cremated 6 years before. A week later, international superstar Peter Frampton stole number one from Tony with his admittedly poignant, "Frankie fucked my wife." Before July came to a close, there were a good many umpteen Frankie tunes at least in the national top 40. Frankie fucked Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles. Frankie and Annie had a baby by that soulful Negro group, the Midnighters. Frankie porked my niece by Ed Sanders of the once banned Fugs. Francesco fucka my baby by Dean Martin, his most successful side in more than a decade. Frankie is a punk rocker by the Ramones. Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, lying next to Frankie by the ever outrageous Rolling Stones. Frankie's Pipeline by Dick Dale and the Deltones, and close to many, many more. Perhaps the biggest surprise of all, or maybe not so surprising considering pop's proclivity for the so-called answer song, was I Fucked Frankie by the Singing Nun. I fucked Frankie, but don't you dare call me a whore. I fucked Frankie, and I'm going back for more. Which we have the asterisk leads us to I Fucked Frankie by the Singing Nun. Copyright 1974, next 75. Miracle of Love music, used by permission. And Sister Surir, this is how she was known, Sister Surir was not alone among the gammers, as a trio of others scored with Frankie tunes as well. Marcy Blaine with Frankie's Girl. Little Peggy March with I Will Follow Frankie. And Marie Osmond with I Screwed Frankie, parentheses, out of wedlock. Who was this Frankie? What was the strange power he had over women? And more to the point, why was he dipsticking every dame in captivity? And so ends chapter 1. See, at the time we wrote this, I think that both Nick and I have always had a hunger to write intentional bad stuff. I mean, meaning like stuff where the prepositions and the objects of preposition don't quite work together, and just stuff that would make a mess of syntax or insult the editors who would take this or whatever. So I think that in some ways this was a compromise between that. We could have done much, we could have been more offensive, and we could have been syntactically more offensive. This was, I think, this reads like F. Scott Fitzgerald compared to what we could have done. Chapter 2, The Cold Hard Facts of Life. On April 15th, as this is, I guess, still 1975, on April 15th, as all law-abiding Americans were paying uncle, through the nose, we might add, the sleepy seaside community of Frankfurt, Germany slept. Is it on the sea? I don't know. A certain Hans Brunner, however, lay awake, pining over his until then loyal housefrau's infidelity of the night before. His 11-year marriage made in heaven turned to shit before his very Augen, those are eyes. He heads for his favorite watering hole, the Club Wurzburger, in the Flaumchenstrasse. Nick claimed that Flaumchen is German for cunt. There sits Heinrich von Eigenflugen, his friend. Haben Sie einen Bleistift, mein guten Herr? Which means, do you have a pencil? There's this movie, Operation Crossbow, which is supposed to have what's her name? Who's the one who followed Anna Magnani? Sophia Loren, right? Sophia Loren is supposed to be in Operation Crossbow, starring George Peppard. She's in the movie for a total of 3 minutes. But anyway, in this movie, this guy is an American spy who speaks good German, and he's supposed to infiltrate a missile plant. And the first line he speaks in German is Haben Sie einen Bleistift. So, it's like the first line you learn in German or something. Haben Sie einen Bleistift, mein guten Herr. Not sehr gut, Heinrich. Meine Dame ist ein Schlampe. I think that means tramp or something. Nick looked that up. Eine Schlampe? Question mark. Eine filthy Hure. Eine Hure! Sie ist der Schmutz, which is, I think that means dirt. Mein Gott! Heinrich's lower lip drops in disbelief, coming to rest upon his foaming stein of Lowenbrow. Ja, es ist true. Sie hast ficken. I think that means fucked. Ficken! Meine Damen und Herren! Ficken who? Ficken Frankie. Frankie? Yeah, Frankie. Crowds are like that. They take a long time getting to the elusive point. Kant called this das Ding an sich. Kant could afford the luxury of eloquence. Frankie had never dinged his wife. But back to Hans and Heine. Slowly, with pain in his voice, Hans divulged the sordid details. How his wife had become a slut and a whore overnight. How, returning home after a hard day at the worst factory, he had found her that evening, ... naked, drunk, wet, massaging her privates with sticky fingers, uttering over and over that single name, those two gruesome syllables of horror, Frankie, Frankie, Frankie. He had hit her good. Crowds do such things, remember? In fact, the original version of this I wrote, remember WW2? And my friend Liza Williams, who was one of these ancient bohos, used to write for the Free Press. She was like, she lived with Lucian Carr in 1947. She said, cut the WW2. People will get the crowd reference. Just remember would be good enough, she told me. So I dropped it. The impact of the wallop shook alien semen from her innards. He saw it dribble down her leg, disgustingly. Yes, it had been awful, more awful than anything he had ever experienced. Heinrich expressed sympathy. Little did he know that, across town, at this very moment, his beloved Hilda was straddling the maleness of this mysterious Frankie. Four delirious orgasms already under her belt. In all the years of blissful marriage, Heinrich had only given her one, and that was with his tongue. A new darkness was upon Deutschland. Soon it would be über alles. Now we get to chapter 3. Statue of Lib wets pants. Many people have arrived on boats. For starters, there was Columbus. Then there was Valentino, the great Al Einstein. Opportunist scumbags such as Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Oh, fuck, you know who we mean. They call it America the melting pot. But the pot had never seen the likes of the man who set foot on her shore during the twilight hours of April 29th, year of our Lord, 1975. He had a stale strudel in his pocket, and he spoke not a word. The name on his passport was Constantine Constantinopoulos. This was not his real name, nor was he Greek, nor was he here to open a souvlaki stand on the corner of 8th Avenue and 14th Street. Like in 1974-75, the biggest new wave of immigration since Puerto Ricans in the early 50s was Greeks to New York. They even had Greek wrestlers for a while. Because wrestling has always been this Horatio Alger lesson to immigrant groups, and they thought that if they had some good guys who were Greek wrestling, they would turn the immigrants into good people. Okay, anyway, he was not here to open a souvlaki stand, blah, blah, blah. He was here to fuck your gal. He checked into the Holiday Inn on West 57th Street between 8th and 9th. This is an exact location. But the accommodations did not meet with his approval. It had something to do with the Buff Cordon Bleu. After one night in this dump, during which he had left his dirty mark in no less than at least one chambermaid pudendum, he moved to the plaza where the beef was considerably better. He remained in his room for a number of days. This is a paragraph with references to a lot of topical New York stuff that nobody even in New York could care about. It's like we talk about the Gunther Less show. He was this guy who, if you ever see this so-called the New York Superstation, whatever it is, WOR, they have the Joe Franklin show. Joe Franklin has had a talk show 5 days a week since 1947. And he's just like this dumb little short guy with dyed brown hair. And another show also on that channel was Journey to Adventure with Gunther Less. He was this German guy who couldn't speak very good English. And every day he had a different guy doing PR for another place you should visit, like Ceylon or somewhere. So I liked that show. It was a good show because essentially in the course of half an hour, all you would see was PR for a place you would never go. So anyway, he remained in his room for a number of days and came to know American television quite well. He especially enjoyed Mary Tyler Moore, tolerating her wrinkles because her gams were, quote, out of sight. As American hipsters of the time were fond of saying, he made a note in his little leather book that he must someday rip her marriage asunder with his mighty stem. She was going to be in a later volume. He also liked Journey to Adventure, featuring amiable European Gunther Less, because it reminded him of all the places he'd been. Of the local New York shows, he was most taken with the ABC News, for it showcased the charms of a bubbly negress, a terrible word you should never use, named Melba Tolliver. I don't know if you know Melba Tolliver. She was the first black newscaster in New York. And they even once, in the very first year of Monday Night Football, because it was ABC National, they had Melba Tolliver interview like the Purple People leaders of the Minnesota Vikings. She would talk to like mean defensive ends and say, "You don't scare me, Carl Eller," or something. Anyway, I think she's still doing the local news in New York. She didn't advance national. Anyway, Melba Tolliver. Okay, here's Frankie thinking. Must have that Melba tonight, the gentleman thought upon viewing her shiny features for the third night in succession. This chambermaid thing has gone far enough. Finally acclimated to the city's brisk springtime air, whatever that is, he ventured forth, grabbing a cab to ABC's 6th Avenue studios. A patient sort, he waited outside the revolving doors for a glimpse of the coffee-colored queen of reportage, following the News's 11 p.m. installment. Close to half an hour went by. He waited, and then Melba. Melba, I presume. He spoke in perfect English, without a trace of accent. Hi, do I know you? Only in your dreams, sister, only in your dreams. She blushed. Who are you? Frankie's the name, Lovin's the game. Would you care for a cocktail? They retreated to Miss Tolliver's posh Upper East Side pad, where the man called Frankie proceeded to have the talented news person as no white boy had had her before. A close, and this is like my publisher Peter Schneider I had a close encounter of all three kinds, and he thought that was too corny. He's not here tonight, so fuck him. He wanted me to change it, so I changed it to a close sin counter. He thought that was ironic enough. A close sin counter of all three kinds. Publishers, they make you do dumb things. A close sin counter of all three kinds was had by Frank, who pronged with gusto at each of Milady's major holes d'amour before dawn had met the day. Her chocolate runway, in particular, taking on new dimensions in smut-pun double entendre. As the first ray of sunshine filtered through the Art Deco Venetian blinds, Frankie rose to put on his argyle socks. Melba stirred. Oh, Frankie, you can't be leaving so soon. I could come at least another 12 or 13 times before brunch, ... Sorry, my darkish slut. I must be on my way. He zips his fly. Hasta la vista, my cold-colored lady of cunt. Oh, Frankie, you say the loveliest things. And now chapter 4 is broads say the darndest things. ABC Nightly News, May 3rd, 6:08 p.m., approx. After hemming and hawing her way through a story on the drowning death of an 8-month-old infant at the Brooklyn College Olympic-sized pool, Mel Vitaliver, quote, Greater New York's newscaster numero uno, in the opinion of the prestigious New York Post, this is before the Australian bought it, took pause to get highly personal before an audience estimated at several million supper-time viewers. Shaken from their overcooked liver and mashed garbanzos, they heard the following, babies are fine. This is the baby dining pool. Babies are fine. In fact, they're great. I hope to have one someday myself. And when I do, the father will be Frankie. Yes, that's right, Frankie. Over the weekend, an event occurred that has changed my life entirely. A man named Frankie invited me to sip a slow gin fizz in a nearby candlelit bistro. Courtship is like that, but in this case, no courting was necessary. Ladies, you know what I mean when I say his eyes made me an offer my heart could not refuse. Before the taxi ride to my apartment was over, Frankie had already removed my pantyhose in the crudest of fashions. Actually, he just ripped them off me. And he made no effort to impede his progress. In the elevator, oh Jesus, we engaged in what the French call soixante neuf. That's the one where you're both, you know. Anyway, it was incredible. The rest of the night, his Johnson would not quit. And I took it in my, quote, 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 the gal who had twice received a regional Emmy as female